Good morning. How's everybody doing? All right. Great. Thank you guys all so much for choosing our session on heat pumps this morning. My name is Dave Liss. I work for Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships. We're a regional energy efficiency organization, work with stakeholders from Maine down to DC. I am the Technology and Market Solutions Director and work on a number of regional market transformation initiatives, one of them being around heating electrification, so all things heat pumps. And so excited to be here today. We've got a great panel. What we're really gonna dive in on, I really wanted to start from with some really encouraging news about how this market is growing. Just last year, heat pumps in the New England and New York markets outsold furnaces, outsold central AC, obviously, outsold boilers. So there's real market momentum around this technology. Matt shared some data around that there were around 75,000 homes in New Hampshire that have heat pumps in them today. And going back to the numbers that I quoted, we've seen 25% annual growth in the region for heat pump sales dating back to 2016. So it's year after year we're seeing really incredible growth to this market. So what I really wanted to dig in today was, what's driving that? What is it about this technology that's so compelling? How does it fit into this broader kind of clean energy transition that we're talking about? And again, we've got some great folks, a good mixture of a manufacturer rep, expert advocate, and Kim's in the field as an installer. So a great group of panels. I'll let them just each introduce themselves briefly. Do you want to start down in the end, Kim?
Thank you everyone for coming here today. My name is Kim Bergeron, Bergeron Mechanical in Keene, New Hampshire. I'm a second generation HVAC company owner. And I'm proud to say on November 1st of 2022, we went green. So we will only sell a green or electric solution to any new customer. So we're coming up on a year of that, and we'll allude to a little bit later about 33% growth again this year.
That's pretty remarkable. My name is Matt Rustica. I'm director of mechanical.
Mike's on. Mike's on.
Hello. Sorry, do you want to do yours? My name is Matt Rustica. I'm the Director of Market Transformation for the Building Decarbonization Coalition. We are a national coalition of building sector companies and groups. Our membership includes companies that represent 80% of HVAC sales in the US and 90% of water heating sales, as well as the design and construction community, other NGOs, and various groups with a stake in the building decarbonization transition.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see a room full of people interested in heat pumps. My name is Matt Tillis. I am the area sales manager for Mitsubishi Electric. So we are one of the leading, I will say the leading manufacturer of air source heat pumps here in the United States. I cover just New Hampshire. So as far as my history with air source heat pumps, I've basically been on every side of this industry. I kind of was an installer. I have sold for distribution, and now I'm lucky enough to have the role with Mitsubishi that I have. And this technology has been around for a long time. I've been doing this for 10 years with air source heat pumps, and it's been a lot of fun. This has been, as my coworker Dana Fisher once said, we're all on a rocket ship, so let's hold on here.
All right, so we're going to do I think the session's about 75 minutes. We're going to do about 45, 50 minutes of Q&A up here, and then so we should have plenty of time, if I do my job right, to leave some time for questions. It looks like a good sized group that we can be pretty informal. So please do jot your questions down as we discuss, and we should have plenty of time for direct questions. So I wanted to start off sort of at a high level and sort of start with you, Matt, about putting this technology, heat pumps, in the context of some of this broader energy transition. We heard about the opportunity to decarbonize, electrify. give us put heat pumps in context for us.
Right. So, I mean, when you look at this from an emissions perspective, you're talking about a third, maybe a little bit less than a third of all the emissions that we are responsible for in the region here. It's a little bit different by state, but here in New Hampshire, it's about a third of emissions come from buildings. So you're talking about a big chunk of the emissions. You know, when we say clean energy, heat pumps are really one of the few technologies that are going to be responsible for a lot of those reductions. In context, you know, I think I would say the clean energy transition is, as we know, a complicated topic to talk about. There's always kind of like but what about this? But what about that? You know, and heat pumps are no exception. There's a lot of questions about them. They're still a relatively new technology to people, even though they're really just air conditioners with like a $6 reversing valve in them. So you hear a lot of like questions like that. People have questions about the grid. People have questions about the cost. People have questions about their energy bills, and all those things have been kind of getting worked through recently in New Hampshire and in states around the country. With the passage of the IRA recently, in my experience, there's been a lot more attention turned to heat pumps, even than we had before. And you know, as the stats that Dave cited at the top of the meeting proved, there was a lot of interest before. And so what we're really doing right now is girding for the takeoff of that rocket. You know, in a national context, as I said, BDC's membership includes all the major HVAC manufacturers and some of the big distributors operating in the country. And they're all trying to figure out how to onshore production and how to, you know, get product out there and how to influence, you know, efficiency programs such that we can get the right incentives to the right people at the right time. You know, raising awareness among especially low and moderate income households that are going to benefit a lot from the IRA dollars. So really, the context that we're in is we're just about to blast off. I mean, I like to say we're like in an airplane and we've reached speed but have yet to take off, right? So we're at this really big inflection point, and I think that, you know, these other guys, Matt and Kim at the table here, are gonna be the ones to carry it off. You know, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys as well.
I'm gonna sort of get into. And maybe Matt, you can share with us just sort of the state of the technology in terms of, you know, you've been in for 10 years. How has the offerings and the you know, what is available to consumers? You know, what does that look like, and what in your mind has sort of been, you know, why homeowners and businesses have been adopting the technology?
Well, I think when you talk about HVAC, especially with Americans, there's like three things that drive, you know, interest towards certain products. The first one obviously is comfort, right? Everybody wants to be comfortable. If they're going to do an HVAC system, that's number one. I think the second thing that is attractive to people is efficiency. The biggest bill that most homeowners have is in their heating and cooling bills. So if you can save money in that sector, you know, it's gonna have a big impact on your pocketbook or on your wallet. And more so now today than when I started way back when in the 90s, right? Is you know, environmental impact. So those are the things that I think that are getting homeowners interested into this technology. Some of the things that made this more viable and more realistic for us to use air source heat pumps in a northern climate like we live in, it really all started with a refrigerant change. So once upon a time, heat pumps, air source heat pumps, had kind of a bad rap. If you went back 15 or 20 years ago, they had a bad rap, and it was probably deserved. So a heat pump essentially is an air conditioner, just like Matt said, an air conditioner that can run in both directions. And we were operating with a refrigerant. It was R12 or R22. You don't have to remember that, but just remember this. It was a Freon-based HCFC refrigerant. It wasn't good for the ozone. It was an ozone depleting refrigerant. And also from a performance standpoint, that refrigerant really wasn't great at pulling energy out of cold air. So it was a really good air conditioning refrigerant because it could take heat from a hot space and reject it to another area, which is all a heat pump really does. It absorbs heat and it rejects it to another area. About 10, I guess, or 12 years ago, we went to 410A, and that's a much better refrigerant at absorbing and rejecting energy. So now we're able to actually absorb heat energy from temperatures as low as -13, -15, even -20 degrees, which now it starts to make sense that we can pull heat from that outdoor air temperature that we live in for 6 months of our lives and reject it back into our house to heat the space. So that's the first bit of technology, I think, that started getting us down this path that we're on right now. And then the next piece of technology that really helped us was what we call an inverter-driven compressor. So there's a little compressor in there that moves the refrigerant around the circuit, one direction or the other. Traditionally, compressors were big and they came on all at once. They had a single speed. Now, with an inverter-driven compressor, we can vary that speed. So it does a couple of things for us where we can slow our compressors down considerably. So we're really only going to work as much as we have to condition the space. But also, we can crank them up. So everything we run on in America is 60 hertz. Everybody has heard that, right? 60 cycles per second. With our inverter-driven compressors, we can spin those things up to 120 or 130 hertz. So twice as fast, twice as much work. It creates a pressure differential, and it allows the refrigeration process to do what it needs to do in the conditions we live in. And then I think the last bit of technology that really got us to a place where we can enjoy the comfort, we can enjoy the efficiency, and we can enjoy the environmental benefits of this equipment is a little tiny refrigerant valve, believe it or not. So every refrigerator, every air conditioner, every heat pump out there has what's called a metering device. It's a little valve that feeds refrigerant to a coil based on how much you want that machine to work. Traditionally, that was a mechanical valve. It had a little sensing bulb, and it had oil in a capillary tube. When it got hot, it expanded. When it got cold, it retracted, and it drove the valve open and closed. Not very precise, not very, we didn't have a lot of control there, trust me. I tried to dial many in my day. So now we have an electronic expansion valve or a linear expansion valve that we can actually meter refrigerant to such a precise level that we can create those pressure differentials between high side and low side within the machine and all of those things that allows the refrigeration process to happen in extreme conditions. So I think that was probably more complicated of an answer than he was looking for, but those are the things that have happened with our machines, with our technology that allow us to enjoy comfort, efficiency, and also, we're not burning any fuels, we're not sooting up any chimneys, we have the same refrigerant and we just spin it around in the system over and over and over again. So it really plays into all of those things.
All right, I wanted to follow up, Kim, on your introduction. If you could talk to us a little bit about your story and your journey as an installer from what is this technology meant to your business?
Sure. So I'm going to start with a little story. Back in 2006, I'm a big snowmobiler and off-road motorized enthusiast. So I'm a dirty person. I use a lot of fuel. The work that we do in HVAC, oil, gas, chemicals, it didn't bother me. I'm a consumer, but I'm up in Canada, and I remember clearly coming up over a hill on a trail, and the whole valley was melted out except for this groomed ribbon of snow and ice. It was a smelting plant. And this blast furnace of heat hit me, and I don't know what changed in me. It's back in 2006. Something just changed. I said, I have to do a better job on a personal level. And that change started me looking in different directions. Okay, so at the time, commercially, any type of commercial industrial building where an oil-fired boiler or a gas boiler, and you're using this older refrigerant, 22 with chlorine in it for the cooling. You have two completely separate systems. And back in the mid-2000s, some of the manufacturers came out with some cold climate heat pumps, mainly on the commercial side of things for multi-story buildings. That technology bled through, and we all remember we had a bad recession, 06, 07, 08. All of a sudden, we're not doing anything residentially. Mitsubishi and other manufacturers went, I'm sure they're looking years out, went to the drawing boards and they said, what can we do on the residential side? So I think it was 2013, we put in our first cold climate heat pump. We started changing the homes we were building. We aligned ourselves with general contractors that were more green, creating homes that are building homes that were tighter, homes that are so tight that they required air exchange as opposed to most of the homes we all live in. And the other side of that is all of a sudden we're building a 2,000 square foot home that here in New England only needed about 30,000 BTUs of heat to adequately keep it at 68 or 70 degrees. And I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm looking at, okay, my smallest furnace at the time is 60,000 BTUs. It is on or off, or maybe 50% on, still dumping 30,000 BTUs on or 60,000 BTUs. And Matt hit the comfort button. So all of these homes, the home would get 3 or 4 degrees cold, the furnace would kick on, it'd be 3 or 4 degrees higher. Hot, cold is sine wave. Sine waves are not energy efficient. Highs and lows, lots of watts, lots of fuel. So we came out, we installed our first cold climate heat pump, and I had reservations. This was in Hanover, New Hampshire. It was for a doctor, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm putting this in his home. This is his retirement home, and what's going to happen if it doesn't work? But we put it in properly, and we learned. And that has progressed now to 90% of our business on the residential side is a tighter home. For retrofits, so here we are with a lot of homes built in New England in the 80s and 90s. All of our HVAC systems are 20, 30, 40 years old. And these occupants are looking for a more efficient way to heat and cool and comfort. Big thing now is AC. And with a heat pump, air source heat pump, you get free AC. So that's what drove us. It really was. So our business, safety, delivery, quality, price. It's the 4 principles we work on. Actually, I would tell you the price kind of drove us at that point. We realized this is where the market's going. These are where people who are thinking forward, like all of you here today, that's where we can create business and volume. And we've done a few municipal buildings. We've done some commercial buildings. There is technology now there on the industrial, municipal, commercial side where with this technology, you can actually think of a 10-story building, okay, like this building. Today, if the sun was out, we'd need to cool upstairs and we need to heat downstairs. We can actually take and move those BTUs within the building using very minimal watts of electricity. Highly efficient, and oh yeah, what about what happened to us 2 years ago with the big COVID, okay? Ventilation, now we are moving air, we have ways to clean the air, purify the air. So the technology has just gotten better and better. When I say better, easier to install, easier to understand. There is a learning curve on the consumer side. As Matt alluded to, these systems are designed to run constant. So today you all came to work. Did you unplug your refrigerator? No. I want to keep my, my beer cold or whatever, my vegetables at 38, 40 degrees, okay? We're building homes now with HVAC systems that don't shut off. The fan is always running, but as Matt alluded to, the fan's not running at 100% parting your hair. You can't even feel the air move. So the comfort level, the number one thing, is significantly better. All the rooms are the same temperature. They really are. The efficiency, so Kim, what's the hard numbers? There again goes with the consumer education on the front end. When your gas bill drops to virtually nothing, or oil bill, your electric bill is going to go up. But the net cost of energy to the consumer, 30 to 40% less with this technology overall over the year. It really marries well with any type of solar production, which a lot of people are doing, a lot of municipalities are doing. They complement each other, and they are clean. They really, really are. They're better for the environment. The last thing we want a consumer to do is to replace a 80% efficient boiler, which means 20% of the energy goes out the chimney in kind. Maybe keep it for when it's really, really cold out. Get another 10 years of life out of that, and hopefully heat or cool through this different technology.
Great. I guess a follow-up question for the Matts, I guess, here. From maybe a bit more of a local perspective and a more regional or national perspective on some of these benefits. Are you seeing the kinds of the positive economics with your customers and in some of the understanding of the market that you have? You want to start, Matt? Either Matt is.
Yeah, I'm sure the other Matt will confirm this. We're in kind of like a weird place right now with that. Dave mentioned a stat that I pulled out of the federal data a couple of weeks ago that 10, maybe 12% of households in New Hampshire have a heat pump. I'll be honest, like the rebates are not good. The complementary clean energy policies in New Hampshire are, they're not keeping up with the states around it. That's the position we're in here in New Hampshire, and I'm a New Hampshire resident too. Yet we still have 10, 12% of homes with these heat pumps. And it's because people who are buying them based on the comfort factor, because they want air conditioning, because they're quiet, because they're clean, because they improve indoor air quality, are responsible for all those sales, all the many, hundreds of installations that Kim has done, that Matt has sold in the past couple of years. It's because of those, kind of X factors. I think where we're at, certainly at the federal level, but also at the regional level and in many states, is the professionals that are kind of thinking about this and making regulations very often are looking at, savings. They're looking at the kind of like, they're parsing like the expectations as to what, energy costs are gonna be 10 years from now. We all know how foolish that is given what has happened in the past year. And they're parsing and trying to figure out all that stuff on, are we gonna save, $2 on January 13th, 2025, or $2.13? And that's where the conversation is, if we're being frank. Like in a lot of these, spaces where decision makers are paying attention, but at the same time, people out in the marketplace can see the value. They already see it. It's already happening. We have in New England, and Dave Liss can probably speak to this. I mean, 10 years ago, it just wasn't really a thing. I mean, it was a brand new thing. It was a super early adopter technology, and now tens of thousands are installed across the region every year. The difficult question to answer right now is not like how do we get people to recognize the benefits of these systems, because they already do for the most part. The question is how do we convince policymakers that there's this marketplace that they can harness already. It's already there. There's already such a strong base of professionals like Matt and Kim who can make this happen if they just, if they were just asked to do it, right? We could double, triple the number of heat pumps that are installed in New Hampshire every year if we could just find the workforce. And Kim and I were talking about this before the panel started. That's my perspective.
I would agree totally with what Matt said. He lives in that world a little more than I do, probably, but I can tell you just from beating the streets, I covered the state of Maine. I actually live in Maine. I covered the state of Maine and New Hampshire for a long time. And Dave and I were talking in the very beginning, if you go to the very top of Maine, like Fort Kent, the county, it's cold, it's gnarly up there. Almost every house up there has a heat pump hanging on the side of it. And they're using them for primary heat all the way up there. And a lot of that is through the efforts of the Efficiency Maine, rebates. They were an early adopter. They were a leader in policy making and getting that awareness out there. And I don't want to say dangling a carrot, but sort of, to the homeowners to say, hey, try this out. We're going to give you a little kickback on it. It's been frustrating to come to New Hampshire and see the stark difference in how that's being looked at from the policymakers. So, write your legislators.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that, I mean, just very quickly, Efficiency Maine's a great example because a lot of what they do is just like a real frank educational project. They're up there saying, all right, here's the deal. They had this tagline, "Save like a Mainer," which was like this Yankee kind of thriftiness that they really latched onto, and it worked. You know, out there in the marketplace, you know, this is about kind of kitchen table stuff. You know, energy bills, comfort. You know, being cool in July, that type of thing that they've really been good at.
For folks that might not know about sort of the breadth of the technology and the scale of the applications, I guess you could probably all speak to it, but maybe Kim, I know most folks are probably familiar with the smaller mini split residential kind of systems, but speak to the diversity of configurations that you're seeing in the market.
Sure. So nobody wants to see a big rectangle on their wall. That has been the thought of this is an air source heat pump. We now have the ability to replace like a warm air furnace, oil or gas, with what's called an air handler. So the boxes look about the same, and we can produce heating and cooling with that box using an air source heat pump that's 3 or 4 times more efficient than electric heat. We have floor mounted units that kind of look like older radiators. We have really nice ceiling type recessed units that kind of look like a register just like that. We have other small, we call them pancake air handlers for like a single room. You put it up over a master closet and you might have 2 little ducts in the sidewall. There is a plethora of configurations. There are now designer series units. They've been out for a few years. So appliance black or brush nickel as a silver and white. I like to pitch it as it's a nice piece of artwork that makes you comfortable, because the most efficient means is a non-ducted unit. Because think about if you have to move air through ductwork, you're using more watts because you have to power a larger fan to do it. So that's both on the residential and the commercial side. We've got all these different options. Mitsubishi is coming out right now with something all of us contractors are highly excited. It's called a smart multi-coil. So think of, we have this existing oil-fired or gas-fired furnace, and we have a home that's 100 years old. We need 100,000 BTUs to heat that home. Most of our heat pump technology is 50,000 BTUs or under at this point. That's what we can give you effectively. But now we can keep that old furnace, put on a coil, like a central air conditioning coil in the ductwork, and go to one of these really smart outdoor units and probably heat that home for 85% of the year. We only need, again, those large amounts of fuel use and energy use when it's really, really cold out. So it's amazing. I will tell you, 90% of the customers that we go to, that's their thought. You know, the hardest part is getting through that wall-mounted unit, because husband or wife or what have you just doesn't want to look at it. And now we have all these different delivery methods, and they're wonderful. They really are. And back to the New Hampshire SAGE program, I agree. So I'm praying. I really am praying that we can change it. So we were getting $400 per 12,000 BTUs or 1 ton of cooling up until I think roughly November of last year. The program went away for a few months. There was enough storm that it came back, and it's only funded at $250 per 12,000 BTUs. So your typical home is between 30 and 48,000 BTUs. That's the system that we're typically putting in. There's not a lot of rebate money there. There's $625 to $1,000 on a $15,000 or $20,000 system. Our neighboring states have significantly more. Really do.
If you're lucky to live in New Hampshire Electric Cooperative Service Territory, then you can get $500. So
Yeah.
that's where I am, really.
Good for
Just to spin off of some of those product offerings that Kim was saying. So it's an interesting thing where we are, because we started out with the plastic boxes, and that's still a pushback and all of that stuff. There's 2 terms that I think I would like to see go away from this whole air source heat pump, variable speed heat pump, whatever it is. Ductless is one of the terms that I'd like to go away from, and mini split is the other one. So ductless implies that we can't do duct work, and it's got to be a plastic box on your wall. Not the case. Every manufacturer has units that can work with duct work. You don't have to have that eyesore in your house. And then mini split, what's that sound like? It sounds like it's a tiny little thing that can use in a bonus room or in an office. And yeah, sure, we're always going to be that problem solver in that way. But like Kim said, we have things that are going up to 4 and 5 tons. That technology is going to continue. Commercially, we have things that go up to 30 tons. You know, we have technology, and I think Kim also touched on this, called heat recovery. So remember I said in my long spiel about technology, about how heat pumps grab heat from certain areas and reject it to another area through refrigeration? In a commercial building, we actually have the capability. So like a big problem with commercial buildings is the top floor gets really hot, the southern side gets really hot, the bottom floor gets really cold, the north side gets really cold. Traditionally, I was a commercial mechanic. Trying to fix that problem with traditional equipment was a real problem, right? You're trying to change airflows, you're trying to valve things down, whatever. Never really fixed it. It was a constant chase your tail kind of thing. With this technology now, we can actually, with the same outdoor unit, the same machine, we can take the heat from that top floor, that southern side, collect that heat with refrigeration, and heat the bottom floors of the building. So we're not rejecting to the outdoors, we're actually just sort of shifting things around. And when you can start to do things like that, now we're starting to make a lot of sense, I think, right? So that's my little spiel anyways. I just wanted to go off on that. Any building, any place, anytime. That's our motto.
Given that, you both had one that follows.
I can't believe I forget to talk about zoning. So most of the homes, most of the municipal buildings, 1 thermostat per floor, or limited thermostats per floors. Same thing with a house. Many of us have had children. The children are gone now. We've got 3 or 4 bedrooms we're using, but we're paying to heat and cool them. The ability to not do that, not only the cost savings of all the utilities, but the environmental benefit. And Matt just kind of touched on it a bit. He said, we're not rejecting heat to the environment. So in that big multi-story building, instead of taking all that heat from the building and throwing it out to the atmosphere, simple BTU, simple physics, now we're keeping it within the building. You do the same thing in your home. It's really kind of cool and neat, and I think Mitsubishi had an analogy of a faucet. You turn a faucet on, it comes out in the sink. You turn your thermostat on, you're putting water in every room, but now we can shut faucets off in those rooms. And then you start thinking differently. I hope you see the enthusiasm and excitement I have, because you really can drive the comfort. The comfort trumps cost. The comfort trumps energy use. If someone's not comfortable, they're going to turn the dial higher or lower. But now we're able to change that. We're going to be able to make a few specific rooms. The kitchen, living, dining area, it's where we spend 90% of our time. Make that really comfortable, and the master bedroom really comfortable. The rest of the area, hey, if we're 5 or 6 degrees off, who cares? Really, I mean, we're just saving money.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick plug. I know this is a heat pump panel, but I want to make a plug for weatherization. I'm like a big weatherization enthusiast. Yeah, there we go. So like we've all got our caulking guns. I think, I mean, this is something that most efficiency programs, including NH Saves, do well, right? Is kind of get the weatherization done that can be done for cheap. Right, and if you're living in the type of house that it was built in the 18th century and is requires that 100,000 BTUs, it's a lot. That's 9 tons of heating. Sometimes all it takes is that basic kind of like blown-in insulation in the attic and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, air sealing and stuff, to bring you down by a significant amount when you have that starting point. Right, so like a good way to deal with this, I think, we always try to talk about the house as a system. You want to decarbonize your house. It's going to take a bunch of different decisions over the course of a long time. And weatherization should be one of those decisions, because if you have to rely on a backup heating system for 20% of your heat, you install the heat pump, that's the case, and then you weatherize, that might only be 5% after that. And it's so much money that you're saving, and you're that much more protected from these wild swings in prices that we've been seeing, and it's easy.
And Matt, you're exactly right. When we walk into a home and we see wood sash windows that are 50 years old, we just won't sell a heat pump. You just, and that's when you're taking cost out of it, of course, because we want to sell as much as we can. We're the greedy contractor, but you have to be able to think differently, and you have to inform the customer and put them in touch with programs. I mean, Of course, if they want it because they need AC, because of some health condition or something like that, but really, we're just going to frankly say, this is where you'd better spend your $10,000 or $15,000. Blowing and insulation, replacing those windows. And you have to be strong enough, and you have to put, I think, really what's right for the customer always in front of profit.
I was going to follow up on sort of the role of weatherization. Thanks for raising that, Matt. Anything on your end, sort of in terms of how weatherization and selling heat pumps, your perspective on that?
Well, I mean, I think, like Kim said, I want to sell as many heat pumps as possible, but there is a logical process to this whole thing, and it is a big picture thing, right? You got to get your envelope right in order to have the maximum amount of savings. Taking a big old pork chop boiler out of your house and just throwing heat pumps at it, if you were burning 5,000 gallons of oil with the pork chop, we're not going to really, you're going to be spending a lot of money on electricity to heat that same home. You've got to get the envelope straightened out. So it's a fantastic point, and just be thoughtful about your approach, I would say, to this whole thing. Heat pumps are a big part of it, but the envelope has to be right. We're gonna have questions.
We're gonna do like another maybe 10 or 15 more, 10 minutes. So just be patient, and we'll have plenty of time for questions. Let's kind of pivot to this issue of what kinds of programs would we're talking about a growing market here in New Hampshire. Matt, you mentioned sort of the opportunity to really supercharge it, and what those kind of programs or opportunities to support the market growth in New Hampshire could look like. So it's really ideas from the panel about what do you think are the opportunities to implement and administer programs here that would really support the market. Thoughts?
Yeah, Dave, you know what? I got some thoughts about this. I mean, the temptation is to go toward, we need higher rebates, right? Just like when we talk about workforce development, we say we need more training, right? It's like that knee-jerk thing, and it's true in a lot of cases, right? In both of those situations, but and so I would like to see higher rebates from NHSAs for heat pumps. I think that there are benefits that aren't being accounted for when they set those rebate amounts. I mean, climate is one of those, but there are all kinds of comfort benefits in other states. They account for like the reduced risk that a child will develop asthma as a result of combustion gases being in the home and things like that. So I would like to see higher rebates. It seems like that's kind of like a step number one. But as we talked about with Efficiency Maine, and earlier in the panel, there's already a big marketplace for this stuff out there in New Hampshire. So it's a question for the program of kind of harnessing that and ask guys like Kim, well, what do you need? There's in HVAC, not just for heat pumps, but across the board, there's been this workforce kind of difficulty for some time, for years and years, that it's hard to attract and retain technicians. And Kim's probably not going to electrify all 650,000 housing units in New Hampshire from his perch in Cheshire. It'd be great if he did. But probably not.
It was some partnerships.
Right. And so we have to start looking at other kinds of programs and other kinds of policy approaches that aren't just the rebate amount. We have to say, like, all right, well, if we as a public want more heat pumps to be installed and want people to have air conditioning that don't have it, which is crucial if you're, if you have young kids, or if you're, an elderly person on a very hot day. I mean, there are health kind of considerations here. If we want that to happen, we have to be able to say to someone like Kim, hey, like, what's your issue attracting employees? And it's like, it's a cost for him. It's a cost to train. It's a cost to pay for health insurance. It's a cost for all that stuff. And we got to start thinking about programs that pay some proportion of a first-year technician's salary or wage, that type of program, or affordable housing is a huge opportunity, and there's a lot in the IRA about that. How do we harmonize our programs, like, between silos is a big issue. So in clean energy, like, they'll go into an efficiency program might go into a house and replace a window with the most efficient possible window, but it won't touch it if it has lead paint on it. an affordable housing program will go in, replace a lead paint covered window, but they won't put the efficient window in, right? And there's all those kind of like difficult, right? It's like different silos. People on one side don't know what the people on the other side are doing, and that's really the problem in every state. It's true in New Hampshire, it's true in California, it's true across the country, is we have like these different ways of thinking about things, in policy. We have the energy side and the clean air side, and really on heat pumps, we're talking about something that touches all those different things. There's a health component, there's an indoor air quality component, there's a pollution reduction component, there's all these different there's all these different things about heat pumps that programs aren't quite capturing because they're not talking to each other. So that I would kind of identify as like it's super nerdy and no one wants to talk about it because it's a pain in the ass. But it's like, that's the real problem. We need to harmonize all the different kind of programs which come with funding sources, right? And then you'll start to see like the smooth, like streamlined policy atmosphere that's going to really help the marketplace kind of like, that's going to be the foundation off which the marketplace can really blast off.
Matt or Cam, you want to add on to this question about sort of, opportunities for support in the market, whether it's incentives, but, the host of other opportunities that might be out there.
So on the contractor side of things, I think we as contractors have to be more accountable. We have educated a lot of commercial building owners and municipalities by simply going out and saying, this technology exists. You have a 50-year-old HVAC system. You're going to be replacing it. Yes, it will be more expensive than putting a boiler in or another packaged rooftop unit. But here are the benefits. And now I think one of the biggest benefits is that reduction in energy use. I can't say cost because I don't know what it's going to cost, but reduction in energy use. Contractors, we live in a crazy world. So on the commercial side, when we win a job, say it's a $500,000 job, we will go work for a month for free. Then we'll put a bill out to a general contractor. It'll take a month for that to get approved, and then we might get money 15 days after that. So on day one, October 1st, you don't get paid till December 15th. That has to change. Recently, with a nonprofit who was looking for the best possible cost, I was able to negotiate 100% upfront payment by giving them a 12% discount. On a $300,000 job, I said, I can save you 12%. This is how we're going to do it. Because now I can go buy everything. We have to think differently about the money because the money drives it all. It really does. And the contractors have to get outside of their comfort zone. Most people wouldn't think this way. Municipalities, we've been blessed to actually work with some on a design build basis, saving them tens of thousands of dollars of design because you have a manufacturer that will come in, look at the building and do a complete analysis and a complete design and go, here you go. And they're going to certify it so that when it's done, if it doesn't work, they're going to come back with the contractor. We're going to make sure it meets the performance expectations. It's an investment. I'm here to tell you from our little company that went from 5 people in 2015 to 8 to 10 in 2021. Now we're 20. I've hired 10 people this year. And we're going to continue to growing into more space locally, supporting 5 or 6 nonprofits, working community-wise. That gets the word out. Who's this Bergeron Mechanical? And what's this heat pump thing that they do? And oh yeah, I can use it for a server room. I can use it for my mom's master bedroom because she doesn't want it in the rest of the house, but I know she's 90. She probably needs to be a little cooler in the middle of summer. I honestly think it's on the contractor side. I would love more rebates because I think that helps sell. Again, on the contractor side, going into a house, most contractors don't properly account for the building age, the building structure, how it was originally insulated. We have software now that we can go into anyone's homes, we can enter some different values, and based on the building code at the time and the assumption that the building was built to that building code, we can very accurately give an idea of what we need for sizing of equipment. Before, my dad was here, he'd laugh at this, okay? He's still with us, he's just not in the business anymore. My dad was known for going by, and we call him, a 6-gun estimate. He'd go by the house, 15 grand, All right, I looked at the size of the house, I've done 20 of those houses, 15 grand, okay? I came here after college and after the Navy and started.
that's what we don't want.
Exactly. But I analytically just started analyzing numbers because I'm a number cruncher. And, you know, I was able to show my dad, hey, we don't want to do this. We'd rather do this type of work. And in '02, he retired. And away we went. So contractor being responsible, I think, and reaching out to people like you, reaching out to the manufacturers. And if they do, they will prosper like our business has and continue to grow. And our end users will be much more comfortable, much more efficient, and do things better for the environment.
I got one more question before we do some questions. I know not all the details of the IRA rebates and tax incentives are sorted out, but what are some of your expectations about what, you know, have you started thinking about how to leverage that for your business, Kim?
So the answer is we can't wait for definition. As soon as it's defined, then we can market it socially through our different medias, on the radio, and what have you. Because right now the consumer, understandably with everything that's going on in the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, has just stopped purchasing. And it's not, you know, I will tell you, historically, December will be a huge month for us. There'll be a lot of people looking to dump money on both a professional and a personal level. But we need definition as soon as possible. This is how much the state of New Hampshire is going to get. This is how much it's going to go for weatherization. This is how much it's going to go for heat pumps. This is how you should apply for this. And I think it's very difficult for the consumer, and we're building a storm. If we don't define this until May or June of next year, then whoever on the regulatory side or utility side that has to administer all of this, or third party, it's going to be a lot of work for them at the end of the year. So I'm just hoping the definition can be there sooner rather than later. It would be great to have it in December. Yeah.
Want to add, Matt?
I'm kind of with Kim, you know, I mean, we need a little more definition. They're throwing big numbers around, you know, there's $4.5 billion in money available, maybe even more than that. You know, they're going to try and reduce things 31 to 44% by 2030 based on 2005 numbers. Yeah, we need more definition on it, I think, for now. I'm just going to say I am a little concerned with the way that New Hampshire deals with it, because it is going to be controlled by the state. So the feds are going to give the money to the state, and the state agencies are going to be the ones that make the decisions on how it's given, what's based on. I mean, there's Energy Star things and there's rules, but you guys live here. You know, it's a little unpredictable here in New Hampshire. So we'll see. And also, I would add, I'll give my coworker a little plug. He has a breakout. Dave Hazel in the back has a breakout on the IRA later in the day. So if you want to learn a little bit more on that, Dave would certainly know more than I would.
Great to tee that session up later. All right, so I think let's leave plenty of time for questions. I think it's, again, small enough crowd that we can just project and we'll do our best. I think I saw a hand up here, and I think you had a hand up earlier. We'll start with here.
So yeah, there are more rebates. New Hampshire co-op members.
Actually, you know what? If you don't mind.
I wanted to grab it earlier anyway, so. New Hampshire co-op members will get $500 per ton, an extra $250 if that proves to be supplying 80% of their heating and cooling, and then another $250, which you mentioned, very important, weatherization. So that can be upwards of $1,000 per ton. And we also offer, members can take advantage of 2% financing for that too. We use some of the money to help buy down the interest rates for that. So it's pretty significant. I'm not sure you didn't mention what Maine is getting, and I'm not.
Maine can get up to, I want to say, $1,800 per assist, per multi-head system.
Okay, so. 2,500 if you're low income.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
So yeah, not quite there, but 1,000 is better than you said 250 or something like that.
Yeah,
so
for Eversource, it's $250 a ton. I'm going through. I just bought a house in Lee, and I have the co-op, and I'm going through that process. So I'd be interested to hear some more details, so I can make sure to get my hands on those sweet plans.
Provide a higher rebate there.
Right. Very good. Thank you.
Details. In the front. Here.
I'll run the mic around.
All right. Get some exercise.
Right.
So I wear two hats. I'm a homeowner, and we're currently undergoing a retrofit to make it, the envelope, and it's really expensive. And it's different than weatherizing. We've weatherized in the past. And so my other hat is that I'm with Sustainable Hanover, and we've had like solarize campaigns in the past to encourage people to put solar on their roofs, and we've been remarkably successful due to these two ladies. So my question is, there's weatherization and then there's retrofits. And at what point do you think it's appropriate for people to use heat pumps, which at least arguably are, like you say, less expensive because we do have a heat pump. And I know that my electricity bill goes up when we're using it in February, but I also know it's a lot less than what it is to burn the oil. So at what point does, how much should people weatherize before you say, if we wanted to have a campaign for heat pumps, say in Hanover, at what point should we say, yes, your house would probably make good sense?
Can I take this one? So that's really hard to answer because every house is different, right? And we got stuck on this question in a bunch of states. What does it mean for something to be weatherized, right? If you had some kind of a law, like Connecticut had this goal, we want to weatherize 80% of our housing stock, and they didn't really act on it because it was like, what does that even mean? I think it's just a cost question for you, right? If you are, if your house is particularly leaky, right, you're likely to have water problems and pest problems and indoor air quality problems that are associated with the kind of decline of the envelope over the course of centuries, right? And so it's not just an energy thing, right? So you have to take into account that side, and then just ask yourself, well, what am I willing to pay for up front, right? A super weatherized house is going to insulate you, no pun intended, from all these kind of swings in cost, right? If oil gets any more expensive, it's gonna kind of keep you from having to deal with that in a lot of ways. There really is no place where it's like, all right, this house is acceptably weatherized, even if you're a heat pump installer coming in to install a heat pump. It's just a question of how much do I need to use the wood stove a lot of time, or where are we putting the heads to ensure airflow and all that kind of thing. I would say in a lot of houses, most houses in the region were built in like the post-war era. There's a lot of ranches out there with no insulation in the walls. In those situations, it's sufficient to just do like the regular $4,000, drop-in kind of weatherization job. If you have a really old house.
Now, I'm curious, actually, does the program have a cutoff? I'm assuming you work for the program.
No, just a member.
Just a member.
Yeah, no, I do.
Is there like in terms of like what you guys find as to be cost effective, or like what are the kinds of measures that you guys offer to the program? Is there a
Yeah, so I mentioned that 80% of the heating and cooling, as long as it takes, it supplies that.
I'm sorry, on the weatherization piece.
Oh, yeah.
Is there, do you guys go up to a certain point where you can support it, and then after that it's done the market sort of decision to how deep they go?
Well, we have, it depends on a lot of different factors, it depends on certain tests that it needs to go through. But
sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. I'm kind of right now. But yeah, it depends on certain BC costs and whatnot. It has to sort of pass those certain tests. But I did mention the $6,000 cap on weatherization. $6,000 cap or 75% of the solar installer comes. So whatever that can handle, and you can kind of pick and choose from those. Sorry if I
it sounds like we don't have it depends a little bit. There's not a perfect answer, but maybe we should just let's move on with questions and we can come back to it, Kim. Sure.
Yes, I'm Representative Fred Plett from Goffstown. I'm on Science, Technology, and Energy Committee. First, I have two questions. First one's, I'm still a little skeptical about the technology right here. And little skeptical about the technology. How, let's say in a typical January in New Hampshire, how much time is spent on defrost? Were you having to air condition the house to get the pipes defrosted outside? Can you answer that?
I can directly answer that. Typically between 12 and 2 a.m. and depending on if it's raining or sleeting or snowing, you could defrost 5 or 6 or 7 times over that morning. Time, probably 2 hours if you're in a bad situation. So you'd say I'm air conditioning the house. Depends on the delivery system. So with a wall-mounted unit, yeah, we don't have any backup heat. With any other types of delivery methods, air handlers, we usually have backup. That could be either your boiler or just plain electric backup. I understand the skepticism. I'd like to come out and change that.
That's giving myself an education. Second question, you keep talking about rebates. Isn't $6 a gallon on oil plus sufficient incentive?
Very good point.
I hated when it went back up in price, down in price in 06, because we were on a run there.
Just I'm interested. Existing homes with hot air, gas furnace or oil furnace or whatever. Are you able to take advantage of that existing ductwork and so on, and just replace? And second, I guess I'm following up on Fred's question. So it's sort of, if you have an existing home that hasn't been weatherized well, the envelope hasn't been completely dealt with, you're already wasting a lot of money on oil or gas. Why wouldn't you go to a more efficient form of heat to waste, or a less costly? Because it would seem to me the comparison would be okay, even though someone might not be able to afford 15 or 20 grand to completely deal with the envelope of the house.
So the first question, it really depends on how that ductwork system was originally designed. I would say in general, if it's a gas furnace, natural or LP gas furnace, your ductwork will be 90% there, because that's what I call a high mass system. It's a low energy fuel, 92,000 BTUs per gallon. So it's kind of a faster delivery, more CFM, more airflow. On the oil side, you have something that's 138,000 BTUs per gallon of heating oil. So the airflow on an oil-fired furnace is significantly less. We need gas side airflow. I would say 90% of the time we're able to use most of the ductwork. The backside of that is, again, defining comfort. Most heating systems, you're ducted really well on a first floor. On the second floor, you may have a duct or two go into maybe just the bathroom. And then the expectation of, hey, how come I'm not warm in my master bedroom? Well, we're not creating as much heat as quickly as fossil fuel, and we're running it a long time now. In fact, we never want that fan to shut off, so we have to educate you on that. The second side.
And another thing, just on the ductwork, I'm sorry.
Sure.
If you do want to utilize existing ductwork and you don't have air conditioning, the contractor's going to have to insulate all that ductwork as well. So just keep that part in mind. But, and I would also say, if you have hot and cold spots that are related to the distribution of air, the ductwork itself, our systems can't fix that. The contractor's going to have to do a sort of a ductwork analysis and answer that question. So the answer is maybe.
Isn't it also true that the new, like if you wanted to put in a brand new furnace, the CFMs that fan gets to would require ductwork modifications in any case? Isn't that also true?
It really depends on the application, and that comes down to the installer. You want an HVAC company that is going to go in and analyze your ductwork and the device. They're going to measure each piece, measure each outlet, and they're going to actually do a duct design. That's what we do. And then I can clearly define this room's probably, if you want it to be that temperature, we have to upsize the duct to this. Other thing on ductwork and weatherization, so most ductwork installed prior to 2004, 2005 on the heating side, not sealed. So all the joints are just mated together. So you can count on 20% of your energy is going somewhere. Now in a basement in a heating system, that's okay. We don't want our pipes to freeze. But if we can tighten those joints up and deliver the energy to the actual living space, that's great. Really important.
How many times do people really actually use duct heating and you know, and all their diffusers, all their, you know, DRGs, it's amazing, and it's completely kills your system and your efficiency, so it's a reason.
Agreed. Better filtration's nice. The other side of your question was, I got a leaky house and I've got a furnace that's just died. 80,000 BTU hot air furnace. I would say work with your contractor. I would say put in an air source heat pump. And hopefully you've got, you know, back to what drives all this, ma'am, you had a question. What happens, when's the tipping point? When do I do the heat pump? It is completely individualized, completely subjective. We just had a 3-story colonial house, 6,000 feet. He's got a steam boiler, an oil boiler. He moved here from California. He said, here's my budget for this year. This is what I want to start with. So the first floor, we're replacing he's replacing all his single pane windows with triple glazed windows, insulating the exterior, and he's just doing that one system. Because we know the upstairs, all those windows need to be done. It is highly individualized and comfort driven too. He wanted some AC.
It's on the manufacturing and the installation side. You can either speak to possibly integrating some of the hybrid technologies such as a geothermal heat pump or solar heat pump, and successes, challenges, pros, cons on those hybridized systems?
So we don't really get into the geothermal side, so that's called water to air or water to water heat pumps. That is a heat pump system, but what we're talking about is an air source heat pump. So the benefits that we have over that type of technology, is that what you're asking?
Kind of, yeah, how integrating those
how we can integrate with those things. So I don't know if we'll ever in the residential world go to like a geothermal style thing that requires wells and that type of cooling. That's where we reject all that heat or absorb heat, right? We're going to stick with air, I think. So probably not integrating, I don't believe, with anything geo-wise. What we do see on the horizon is an air source heat pump that can do hot water, so hydronic heating. That's something that we're looking at. I don't know, Kim, do you have any?
What about like this, like PD systems can help support something?
Well, yeah, they definitely marry up well with that.
Yeah, that's a big opportunity. I mean, that can be costly, you know, to do at the same time, but certainly the combination of those two things. I mean, you have a lot of houses that can just be straight up off the grid, which I know people in New Hampshire are going to love. A few things I want to bring up. So, typically ground source, like you don't hear as much about. It's a smaller marketplace because they're very expensive. There are some companies that are trying to bring that down by kind of like vertically integrating, like buying their own drilling rigs and stuff. You know, Dandelion is one of those. Again, like very small, though. It's not. It doesn't have the scaling potential at this moment of the air source marketplace. That being said, one thing that they're starting to pilot in Massachusetts and New York is a thermal network. So in denser areas, it's like a 12-inch pipe full of warm water set below the frost line. And it's like a utility thermal, right? So theoretically, it can be built by the gas utility, and that's who's doing it. Who's piloting it in these two states. Again, thermal networks, and what you can do is, if you have a heat pump in the house and you do require one, kind of for this setup, you could, take your heat from the air for 60, 80, 90% of the year, depending on your shell, and then take your heat or reject heat from the water pipe. When it's really cold, right? And so there are some conversations happening around, well, how can we manufacture some kind of a dongle that can like fit onto the refrigerant, loop in an air source system and like offtake from the utility thermal. Very early days for that, but I think it shows kind of like the diversity of options that as the marketplace grows, we're going to start to see. That's probably not going to be true in Cheshire County, I will say, unless you're in Keene. Maybe in Keene, maybe for the downtown Keene area. The advantage being that you can take the rejected heat from a freezer in a supermarket, put it in the loop, and then use it in a house nearby. That's starting to kind of be part of the conversation. Again, it's only going to ever be like 20, maybe 30% of all the thermal load, but it's something that's going to be a good option to just make sure that we're all kind of on board.
Did you want to add on quickly, Kim?
if you're asking about how the technologies actually work together, so each manufacturer works really hard on their proprietary software so they can control their devices. In Mitsubishi's case with air handlers, so I could put a hot water coil supplemental to an air handler and bring on and use those BTUs. In their case, they're going to want to drive the air source heat pump as the primary source. And Representative, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name, sir, but okay, in the case of defrost, having that type of backup heat is huge, because instead of firing an electric bank of heaters, we go ahead and pull a little heat from the wood chip boiler or what have you. That's how they work together. It's pretty simple.
We got a bunch of questions, so we're gonna like keep our answers
Sorry.
quick, and we'll try to get
Impossible.
Good. Thank you. I'm on a energy and climate committee, and one of the things that we're going to try to convince all of the residents in our area is to convert to non-fossil fuel renewable energy over the next 20, 30 years. One of the things that keeps coming up as a question, I'm going to ask three things that keep coming up as a question. I'm not sure you're going to be able to answer them all, but I'm going to state them anyway. One of them is that refrigerant has global warming potential. How do you address that? Are we going to be able to transition the refrigeration industry away from refrigerants that have global warming potential? Number two, as we transition to more we electrify our heating and air conditioning, more people are going to make the decision, well, gee, I didn't used to have air conditioning. I used to just open my windows. Now it's so easy, I'm just going to use air conditioning. That's going to increase the load on our infrastructure. And the third one, I can't remember. But anyway, those two are the main ones.
I can speak to the refrigeration part of it a little bit, I think. I talked about the transition from R22 to 410A and how that took away the ozone depleting portion of it. It still does have a GWP, 410A does. So now we're looking at doing another changeover for refrigerants. And a couple of the things that I've been looking at is CO2. We actually have a commercial product right now that does domestic hot water for commercial buildings that uses CO2. That's a challenging one because the pressures of CO2 are extremely high, to the point where it's like you probably need special training to get in there and work on the refrigeration side of things. Our next product, I think, is going to be what they're calling 437B, I believe is the refrigerant that we're looking at. And it has all the same, very similar characteristics of 410A as far as its ability to absorb and boil off and all the things that refrigerant needs to do with a much lower GWP. So that's, and every manufacturer is going to have to deal with that. And one of the weird things about it is a lot of manufacturers are going in different directions. So now, how do we standardize that? I don't know, but we'll know a lot more about that particular question in the next 5 years.
I could just very briefly, just a couple of weeks ago, the Senate ratified the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. So we are like on that train already. There's an existing suite of federal regulations that my organization has been kind of working on to a certain degree that are going to just, on a global warming potential basis, ramp down the amount of high GWP refrigerant that's can be used out in the world. Right, it's a big issue for every manufacturer. Like you said, it's top of mind for every manufacturer right now. So that's something that's already happening. Your second question was about air conditioning and the grid. Currently in New Hampshire and all of New England, we have a summer peaking grid, right? So we have that air conditioning peak happens in July or August. And it's fed by air conditioning equipment that's 10 SEER. SEER is seasonal energy efficiency ratio. It's a cooling efficiency measure. 10 SEER up to 13 SEER, maybe 14 for the most part in the marketplace. Some of these heat pumps, especially the Mitsubishi ones, can be up to like 21 SEER. So it's almost twice as efficient on the cooling end. And then also the summer peak is significantly higher than the winter peak. So there is a situation where up until you get to 35% of homes being fully electrified for heating, you're actually reducing
the summer peak by installing the heat pump because the cooling is more efficient. And then you're better utilizing the existing grid infrastructure in the winter up to a certain point. So that's going to shift, right, when the peak shifts to winter, and there's going to be all kinds of like market changes on the ISO&E side, and all that kind of stuff is going to happen 10 years from now or something. But for the time being, it's actually a grid benefit to install heat pumps in a lot of places, including New Hampshire.
Let's keep going with the question.
Hi, I have a couple issues with heat pumps. First of all, it seems that you still need supplemental heat in order to have a heat pump, so you need two types of heating systems. I purchased a heat pump only 4 years ago, and this is in a fairly new construction, less than 15 years area, where it's only 650 square feet, 2 rooms, and it doesn't keep it warm. I have to heat most days. As soon as it starts to get down to 10 degrees, the efficiency, the heat that comes off of that is not the same as it is when it's 30 degrees. And the cost of it was $6,500 just for this 650 square feet. The rest of the house, which has a traditional oil furnace that's also an outdoor wood furnace feeding into that, it's 2,500 square feet. I can't imagine what the cost would be for an average homeowner to try to put heat pumps in an older home with multiple smaller rooms.
Can I just comment really quick? The word heat pump is like the word sandwich. There's lots of different kinds of heat pumps, right? So they really range from like heat pumps that only do cooling, and super inefficient ones, all the way up to these top of the line ones that someone like Kim is installing. It's really important to know that just as context. Some heat pumps aren't going to provide all your heat, right? We have the ones that do, though.
So what does a homeowner do if they have one that's not providing the heat? Be pretty expensive to replace it, correct?
So first I want to apologize for your contractor or designer. They didn't do a good job. That's the root cause of the problem. They went in and they did a shotgun or drive-by estimate. Okay, we can heat 650 square feet down to minus 13 very, very, very easily of 15-year-old construction. I'm sorry for that. And to his question, if I'll give you my information, give me model serial numbers of what you have, and we can tell you if that system, what it is, and if you can upgrade it. Okay, and give you a cost for that.
I think we have time for one more question. I think, Joe, you got it back.
Thanks. So I got a couple quick comments before my question goes into a couple comments. First, with the weatherization. With the utility programs for weatherization, properly weatherizing your house could drop the heat and load of your house to the point where you need smaller equipment. And with the generous utility incentives on the weatherization portion, you essentially may be able to get that weatherization project for free with the reduced need of heating equipment that you have. So that's definitely something to consider. As far as the representative's concern about heat pumps working in this climate, I've had heat pumps now for over a decade. They're not as good as the ones that are on the market now. And my heat pumps effectively heat my space. And as Matt said, there is a huge difference in heat pumps out there. I work with heat pumps all day long at the utility, and there is a big difference between manufacturers and models within that. That ties into my actual question. The marketplace between consumers and installers is kind of the wild, wild west out there for getting good information that heat pumps actually work in this climate, and also that there's installers selling AC-only heat pumps. Seeing that the difference is a very inexpensive reversing valve, do you see the market getting to a point now where the only models out there will have that reversing valve so that everybody can get the benefit of the heating side, not spend the money for an AC-only unit, and then realize they missed the boat on being able to reduce their energy costs on the heating side?
I think there's always going to be cooling only units because there are parts of the country that they only need cooling. I think it is really up to the contractor base, and we work really hard with our diamond contractor base to make sure they offer heating with every one of them. Hey, if you're gonna do this thing for cooling, for another couple $100, let's put a heat pump in here. And once they start to heat with them, they'll see the light. You use heat pumps, so you get it. So I don't think that every manufacturer is going to go away from cooling only just because of the size of the country and reducing SKUs and all that.
I can say that, so some of our partners at the New Buildings Institute and CLASP, some of these big national NGOs have worked with Senator Amy Klobuchar to introduce a bill called the Heater Act. And it would kind of incentivize OEMs, manufacturers, to produce more, two-way heat pumps, right? Heat pumps that also do heating. It's a big, it's something you hear about a lot in policy circles is like, should we mandate that, in heating climates, all the heat pumps that are sold could at least provide some heating? It's actively being discussed, I would say, in a lot of state houses and in the Congress. Heater Act, HEATR.
Okay, everybody good? We have maybe a minute, or if anybody wants to throw in a last word, otherwise we'll wrap up.
I really want to thank all of you for coming here, especially for the hard questions, especially when you hear that heat pumps don't work, and if they're not properly designed and sized for the application, they don't work. But that's really just in my opinion, a predatory contractor trying to make a sale. So hopefully I can change a bunch of them, because it's worked for us.
Call Bergeron Mechanical. Do your homework. I mean, if you're looking for Mitsubishi, there's a list of contractors. The Diamond Contractor list is online. You can search for it. That's what I did for my house. Those resources are out there, so just take the time to look for them, and you'll find them.
Okay, we have one bonus question.
Where are the parts and Freon manufactured? Is there supply chain issues? And could manufacture of these units is it in New England? Is it New Hampshire? Could we bring it to New Hampshire? If we can tell the representatives that it's gonna, like your company has grown, can we grow that manufacturing phase in the state?
That one's for
You got a quick response, Matt?
I actually don't know where all the refrigerant is manufactured. I'm sorry. It's worldwide, and I think it's probably overseas. I don't think it's manufactured stateside. Parts are all manufactured I can speak about Mitsubishi only. Our parts are manufactured in Japan, and Thailand, and Mexico. Nothing is assembled in the States for us. We're looking at that. Second part of your question was, are there supply chain issues? And the answer to that is yes. Absolutely. Component shortages, raw material shortages, all of those things. Every manufacturer is suffering through that right now. And one of the solutions that our leadership is looking at is bringing some of this stuff stateside. We're expanding our Mexico plant right now, so at least it's on the continent in a truck drive away instead of a boat ride away. But that's going to take a little bit of time.
I would add there was $500 million in the IRA for the enhanced adoption of the Defense Production Act that the Biden administration invoked earlier this year, and there's been a lot of discussions about how to leverage that to bring down the cost of components. Right, the compressor that he talked about, those super advanced compressor units, manufactured in China and Thailand and Vietnam. How do we onshore that stuff? That's what the White House is thinking about. It's a lot of discussion about how do we onshore manufacturing. Maybe they'll bring down some costs, particularly of components. So it's a conversation that's ongoing. Nothing yet, but the bill did authorize a few $100 million to kind of fund loans to OEMs or manufacturers and other assistance to try and make that happen.
All right, we'll be up here for additional questions. Come on up, but we'll wrap up. Please thank the panelists. Thank you so much, guys. Great job. Thanks, everyone.